Okay, so we will begin. I wanted to read a section from a very important work on on uh, on Jewish thought, written about 700 years ago by Rabbi Nisim of Burundi. Was Nisim of Burundi, who lived in Spain in the late 1200s, early to mid 1300s, and the Ran had a very interesting relationship with I won't say relationship. He had a very interesting approach to Jewish philosophy in general. One of his prime disciples, the Rivash, Rabbi Yitzchak ben Sasson. So he has a tshuva where he discusses how his teacher was very perturbed about the growing trend in Jewish mysticism that was going on in Spain and in Provence and the Jewish world in general. And he even goes so far. This is what he quotes in the name of his Rebbe, the Ran. He says that even the Ramban went too far in his delving into this area, and that it was a shame that he spent so much time on it. If he hadn't spent so much time on it, then he would have been able to produce other things, perhaps. Which is a strong what?
It's something interesting.
It's a strong right, exactly. It's quite the strong statement, right? Of course, we have to understand the context of that tshuva. So that tshuva is a topic in of itself. Tshuvas Rivash Kufnun Zayin, where he's talking about trends of very problematic sects of Kabbalists that they're beginning to set up essentially some type of like a heretical sect of Kabbalists. So he's addressing that problem. So not everything that's said in that tshuva can be taken literally. There are things for sure that we know that shouldn't be taken literally. I think we mentioned this at one point. What? Oh no, this is way before. This is way before Shabtai Tzvi. This is for Shabtai Tzvi is late 1600s. So the Rivash is late 1300s. Right. So we're talking 300 years before that. Yeah. This is a different problem. The problems already of the people studying mysticism going haywire a little bit goes way before Shabtai Tzvi. We could say it goes all the way back to Ma'amad Har Sinai. That's a whole other thing. The Rambam has long sections about that. Anyway, we're going very far afield. The Ran is quoted as saying that this was he argued with how much the Ramban delved into this area. But that's not to say that the Ran himself wasn't a very avid philosopher. In fact, the Ran's he had three main disciples. The Ran, one is the Rivash, which we just mentioned. The other one was a Chacham named Chizdai Kraskas, and the third one was Yosef Chaviva, the Nemukia Yosef. And those three people represented the three personalities, so to speak, the three hats that the Ran himself had: that of posek, that of a mafarish, a commentator, and that of a philosopher. Chizdai Kraskas dealt almost exclusively in philosophy. The Nemukia Yosef wrote extensive commentaries on the Shas, and the Rivash was basically the posek hador. All of the major shilas of the generation, they came to the Rivash in Spain and then in North Africa later on. Anyway, so the Ran, his contribution to the area of Jewish thought was a book that has come to be known as Drashos Haran. And there are 13 drashos in this book, and they deal with disparate topics. And in the fifth drasha of Drashos Haran, so he gives a mashal of the kav and the nakuda, the point and the line within the context of a circle. It's like a geometric mashal, which is a very profound mashal, a very profound. It's a metaphor essentially. It's a metaphor. Well. He wouldn't like us to use that word to describe it, probably, but yes, perhaps. The section over here, he's discussing a pasuk from Sefer Mishlei. The pasuk in Mishlei in the Perek Ches says the following: Mikol mishmar nitzor libecha. In all forms of guarding, be sure to guard your heart. Ki mimenu totzos chayim. Because from the heart emanates all the paths of life. That's what it says. Guard your heart extensively, because from the heart emanates all the pathways of life. Ve'af al pi she'hamefarshim perushu shemimenu shav el hamishmar, uva lahazir sheyinsor ha'adam atzmo leval yikal b'shum mishmar. Most of the commentators, he says, are saying that a person should put his heart, like he should pay attention, like even when we say, like in modern Hebrew, some lave, like to put your heart means to pay attention. Yeah. So the idea is that a person should pay attention to all the things that he has to guard. Okay. Which includes all the different guardrails that the Chachamim instituted. Right. That all of these guardrails that are put in place to make sure that a person stays in line, so to speak, are the totzot chayim, are all the pathways of life, so to speak. V'hu amiti bli safek, and this explanation is for sure true. Mikol makom, however, ein nira shetia zu kavanas hapasuk. That does not seem to me the true intent of the verse. Even though the message is true, it doesn't seem to be that this is the proper interpretation of the pasuk. Shelo hayalo lomar libecha ki agdar masiyagim tulum b'maisa lo balev. Right? If it was talking about the actual guardings, meaning all the mitzvot that a person needs to keep in the context of guarding various prohibitions, it wouldn't talk about it in the context of the heart. It's not an action of the heart. Guarding all the prohibitions is not an action of the heart. Rather, it's an action in the domain of action. Fikach nirali kimimenu shavel halev. It's referring to an action of the heart exclusively, right? An internal practice. Hu inyan nifla umashal nichbad. This is a wondrous idea and a very important metaphor. Ki hamashal b'divrei chomri v'hanimshal b'nafshi. The mashal is using corporal and material concrete terms, and the message is talking about something in matters of the soul. And both you could draw parallels to each other and understand one from the other. This is the most wholesome mashal that could be brought. And brings the one who studies it to the level of full wholeness. Because this is the purpose of all mishalim, right? So this is a pretty extensive build-up. So what is this message that the mashal is trying to say? Hamashal ki yesh b'ka. So excuse me, I skipped the. Kasher himshel Shlomo alav shalom ir ketana va'anashim ba ma'at. We find in another sefer that Shlomo Melech wrote, in Sefer Koheles, he says that a human being is like a city. It's like a city, right? It's like a little miniature society that's living inside a person's consciousness. There's a lot of different characters going on, right? Like we know today, do they say the idea that there's this unified you inside your head, and like you're just operating. It's not as simple as that. There are a multitude of personalities that are living inside of you, and indeed you are a city, right? You are a small city. That all of the different faculties and all the different desires and all the different powers of the person's mind and body and heart, they all go after a king. So the king of the person is like the king of the city, and just like all the subjects of the city, they go after the king. So too, a person has a dominant force within their psyche, within their consciousness, that all of the things will go after. Now, the default king is the Melech Kesil, the foolish king. Who's the foolish king? It's the Yetzer Hara. It's the lower side of a person, right? That's like the default. A person does not have any introspection, doesn't give any thought to their actions, and doesn't contemplate the correct path. So the default is to go after the foolish king. However, there's an alternative, as the pasuk in Koheles goes on and continues. There's an alternative, the wise and young king. Why is it called the wise young king? It's wise in that it is oriented properly. That's the Yetzer Tov, and it's called young because it doesn't appear until later. Meaning the old king has been there from birth, right? The Yetzer Hara is there from the beginning, right? The Yetzer Tov is young. Yetzer Tov is young. He only shows up later. Later in a person's life, when a person matures, So he's able to inculcate the Yetzer Tov. So the point is that the person is like a city, and all the different things, all the different faculties of a person at the physical, emotional, and intellectual level, they're all orienting themselves to this center thing, and a person decides what that center is going to be. And one further point, says the Ran, to understand the root of this mashal. Any mistake that falls into a cheshbon, let's say a person's trying to make a calculation. Earlier in the calculation, the mistake takes place. Gam im yeh hatos katon, even if that mistake is very minor, yimshechu mimenu shegios yotzer atzumos. The consequences of that mistake will be worse. Right? Shmuel is already thinking about math problems. Yeah. Right? No, I know what you're thinking. Right? Like that's what you were thinking, right? But if what? Nachon. So he's going to give that very mashal, right? In any complex calculation, the earlier in the process that you make the mistake, the more consequences it will be, right? Like they say, I heard this fascinating piece of trivia, which you can all take away. If there's one thing you can take away from this year, it'll be this. And this is just interesting factoid of history, right? In the late 1800s and early 1900s, there was an obsession with the vegetable spinach because people thought that it has unique nutritional qualities. Why is that? Because they thought that it had a very, very high iron content. And it does have a high iron content. However, the guy who was doing the calculations for the iron content made a mistake with placing the decimal in the wrong spot. So they ended up thinking that it had 10 times as much iron that it really does. It does have more iron. You can see it's a dark color because it has a higher iron content. That's in fact true, but not that much, 10 times more. So there's like these small little mistakes end up having huge consequences. And the earlier that mistake takes place, the more consequential it is. Hamashal, yesh bekan agula. He says pictorially, how can you conceptualize this? You have a circle, okay? V'kavim rabim yotzim mikudos merkaza el hamakif. And you have the center point of the circle, and there's many lines that are coming out of the circle to the periphery of the circle. Yaduhu she'ef shashiyah merchav bein elu akavim parsos. There could be huge distance from in between these lines, right? One line is going to that side of the circle, one line is going over there. There could be a huge separation between the lines. However, they all come together at that one center point. So at the point where they're touching the periphery, there could be huge separations, but at the center point, they're all bound together. A person who is observing from that center point. Imagine you're standing on the center point of the circle. And you're trying to figure out how to go to the point on the circle that you want to go to. Derech osam hakavim, through those lines that are emanating from the point to the periphery. If you make a mistake between which line you go on, that mistake initially, you barely recognize that you've made a mistake. Meaning to go that way or that way, is the distinction is minute. You don't even realize that you made the mistake. Yeah? But as you start walking, the discrepancy between where you're going and where you wanted to go becomes more and more as you go further and further. To completely throw off his path. It would be worse if he had made the deviation in the middle. Meaning, if let's say he started on the right path and then at a certain point he deviated slightly. Okay, so the consequences of that deviation wouldn't be so bad. But the fact that he made the mistake at the very beginning, that made it really, really bad. It is not the case, this person who had the mistake in the very beginning, that the consequences they multiply exponentially as you go further and further. So the mistake in the beginning is much more consequential than the mistake at the end. Okay. Now there's many profound points that you can take with this mashal, but the point that he brought up in the beginning, that from the perspective of the observer at the beginning, in the center of the circle, all the possible emanations are basically the same at that point. They're all there, unified in that one point of potentiality. If you can imagine yourself the observer of all the possible emanations from the center point, they're all there. They're all there at the center. And the vast discrepancy that's experienced at the periphery to you doesn't exist. It doesn't exist because you're experiencing all of the possibilities all together in one shot. Okay, that's the sorry, huh? How is it related to relativity?
From where he's standing,
Yeah.
everybody's just leaving. He doesn't see their end point. But if I'm standing on the circumference,
Okay.
it's a different world. It's a whole different world. I see everything going different directions. There's only one possibility of that one person hitting me and coming to me. So therefore, whatever lessons we're going to learn out of this, I think that's where.
Okay, I hear. So with that introduction, we can go to the ta'am that we're up to right now. We just finished the munach sagol, and now we are up to the munach revi'i. So the theme over here that has kind of been running through the last several ta'amim has been the idea of menucha, because all of the ta'amim they have in their name munach, and even as they appear in the Torah itself, it's the ta'amim, they come in patterns, meaning they don't come individually. They come together with other ta'amim. It's like certain notes have to precede other notes in order for them to flow normally through the words. So we had munach zarka, munach sagol, and now we have munach revi'i. So it says Rav Kook, hamenucha misha'ashat otanu. We're basically talking about different aspects of the experience of menucha, of spiritual rest. So this is the munach revi'i aspect. Hamenucha misha'ashat otanu. The rest gives us delight. Hatziyur hapnimi shehinenu mevurachim ad beli dai. We feel blessed by this rest in an infinite way. Sheyesh otzer malei, a full storehouse, b'malo hahayim, b'ma'amakei nishmatenu, in the depths of our soul, rivei birkat Hashem, completely satiated with the blessing of God. Shekol ma sheruach hamenucha choder amok b'kirbenu yoter, the more that the spirit of rest penetrates our psyche more and more, yoter anu margishim, to that extent we feel and experience et malei sipuko, its full satiation. Et osher hadayut shelo. This word dayut has appeared another time. Dayut, the enoughness of it. We experience the sense of enoughness that comes with rest. Vehenenu chavetzim latus tisa shel shava, and we experience the desire to fly, right? To fly, like the word that he used in the last one, tisa. It's like the experience of fly, right? Of hovering over and viewing everything from a bird's eye view, and just slowly and pleasantly flying over reality. Mimeromei ha'aliyut shel hadakaut hama'aneget el hashalva hapnimit shel hashpalat haruach, which causes hashpalat haruach. This is like a paraphrase from the Mishnah in Avos. It compares the qualities of the students of Avram to the students of Bilam, right? Shval ruach. Shval ruach is a positive thing, right? Ruach shfala, a calm spirit, not a spirit that's constantly in a state of chaos and chasing, right? But a shval ruach, which is right, a calm spirit. Shel haitztamtzemut hapnimit, which is a constricting within. B'chol malei haratzon, with all of the will. B'chol malei argashat ha'eden mitoch ha'itkansut ha'ni'ima, the feeling of Eden, the feeling of gentility. Again, this word gentility, Eden, has come up over and over again in the Ta'amim, in the section that we're learning now. Hani'ima el tochiyut chayenu pnima, which is the experience of being in the inner recesses of ourselves. Zoti argashat harivi'i. This is the feeling that comes with the rivi'i. This cantillation. B'ni'imat hod shalvat zimrata, with the splendor of its peaceful connotation. Hamachubara lemenucha, which is connected to rest. Hakfula shel munach munach, which is connected to the double rest, because the Revi'i, the cantillation Revi'i, appears always after two munachs. Hamachshira,
Always?
it's not necessarily that you have two of those little signs that come before it, but the introduction into the Revi'i requires two munachs. Munach, Revi'i. It always flows in that way. Huh?
You have to wait. We learned is that the way
in that classic pattern, the thing that appears in the beginning of all the Chumashim, you do have two little L-shaped things that appear before the Revi. That's true. Hamachubara lemenucha kfula shel munach munach, right? This double rest. The double rest meaning the experience of rest, and then the experience of rest penetrating into the deep recesses of the psyche that allow the person to experience the dayut, the enoughness that comes with rest. Hamachshira utanu, which allows us liklot et hod haoneg hanisgav shel or hashalva, which allows us to receive the sublime light of the light of tranquility. Shel ma'ata ha'anava, which is cloaked in humility. Hamalaya pe'er kodesh v'ni'imat netzach, which is full of the splendor of holiness and the pleasantness of eternity. Hamatsuyara b'tmuna hanikuda shel ha'revi'i, which is all pictorially represented, meaning the actual tam. How is it represented? It's represented by a nikuda, by a dot. That's literally the picture. The fact that it's become like this diamond-shaped thing, that's only to distinguish it from other dots, because dots are like they appear as the nikudot or whatever, right? But really, it's just a dot. That's what it is. It's a dot. Umeira mitoch siguv hachayim ha'adinim shel ha'otiyot, and it gives its light through the gentility of the light of the letters. Again, highlighting this point. He always highlights this point that the ta'amim are not a standalone concept necessarily, but they're always there to accentuate the theme of the letters, because they're always said in the letters. They're the tone. They're the tone in which the letters are being spoken, in which the words are being spoken. Which express rather the rest, the silent rest. Okay, so this idea of what he's saying is that we had the two experiences of rest that appeared in the last two ta'amim. The munach zarka, the first, which is, let's say, the superficial experience of rest, is resting for a practical purpose. We need to rest in order to be able to have more koach later on to go and function. The munach zarka, which literally means rest and emanate, resting in order to emanate afterwards. That's like the superficial phase one. That's rest 1.0. But then there's a more advanced stage of rest. We talked about munach sagol, which is a rest that gives insight into a more profound understanding of existence itself. The sagol means the harmony that results with lack of conflict. That was the conversation we had last time. The sagol pictorially representing, right, the two dots at the extremes, and then the dot on top bringing harmony within them. When all conflict is resolved, so there's a rest which is inherently good. When all conflict is resolved, that is an inherently good rest. It's not rest for a practical purpose. It's rest because it's inherently good. And now this is a third stage of rest. A third stage of rest is being able to retreat. He uses this word hitztamtsemut, like hitkaptsut, right? And what's the word that he used? Shall hitztamtsemut, right? Hitztamtsemut, like the hitztamtsem means to constrict. It's like we have like a group of people that are spread out. So he's like hitztamtsem. So they all gather in to a center. So we've had this idea come up in other contexts of the pizur hanefesh, is another term that Rav Kook talks about, like the spreading out of the soul. When the person's consciousness is spread thin, so to speak, and it's invested and concentrating and giving attention to a variety of different things. So the person is in a state of pizur. They're in a state of being they're just all over the place. Lit pazer, right? Altit pazer, right? It's like a term in modern Hebrew. Altit pazer means don't be spread. Don't spread your consciousness thin. Basically, like focus on one thing. So we've had this come up in different contexts. But this is talking about specifically that rest and a retreat from the externalities of the world allow a samut, a retreat inward, in which a person comes to the central point. The central point. And this is why I thought that the mashal of the Ran gives a very powerful insight into how to understand this message. Because we live in a world that is at the periphery. We're at the edge of the wheel, so to speak. Okay? Something that I think I mentioned to Yoni once is that one of the things that the lessons that's learned from the mashal of the Ran is that if you have a wheel that's spinning very, very fast, what's the only point on the wheel that isn't moving at all? The center point is the one point on the wheel. The wheel can be spinning at 1,000 RPM, doesn't matter. It could be moving infinitely fast. But the center of the wheel, the absolute center, is not moving at all. Once you go a little bit onto the periphery, then you start to begin to move. You start to spin. But if you're at the center point, you're not moving at all. And this idea of the hitstam samut pnima, of being able to go into the inner recesses, to the place where that is undisturbed by the externals of the world, that is the munach revi'i, the rest that allows a person to retreat inward. And this is a koach of the nefesh. This is a tool of the soul which is granted to every human being. It feels like sometimes this thing is outside of our free will, because we're attached. We have attachments that keep us connected to the externalities of the world. But this koach of the munach revi'i, right? The double rest that allows the right choderet pnima, that it penetrates deeply into our psyche and allows us to retreat inward. That is a power that everyone has. Everyone has this munach revi'i. Yeah. This line there about hatam revi'i hum b'chinat visualit, pictorially, right, and visually, kemin nikuda. It is like a dot, v'zu meramezet al katnut, and this is the idea of smallness itself. Kind of like when we talked about the yud. The yud is always discussed in Chazal as this infinitesimal dot. Right? It's supposed to represent the beginnings of all other things. Right? The yud, coming from the yud, is the small little leg and the small little chupchik on the top. Right? It's hinting to the fact that other things can emanate from it. Right? You can draw the leg down more, or you could lift up the top, or you can extend the roof and make other letters. That's true, but it's just the infinitesimal dot of potentiality from which all other things emanate, and that is the central dot, so to speak. The central dot of the Revi'i is the culmination of menucha, the culmination of rest, that allows a person to be in a state where their consciousness is not dependent on the externals. So that is the Revi'i. Now we're up to Ma'apech Pashta. Ma'apech Pashta. So, Ma'apech Pashta. Choderati b'kirbenu ha'argasha ha'ni'ima. After we have had the pleasantness of rest that has come within us, that has penetrated into our consciousness. First, we experience the genteel pleasantness of the pashta. Right? That was the first tam, pashta, simplicity. That uplifts us in its pleasant voice. Beskura et kol hata'atuim hamachovim v'hafraot shel ha'olamim hamurkavim. It allows us to appreciate the pain and the disruptions, disruptions, like something is disturbing you, right? Atamafriya, ha'afraot, the disturbances that come with the world that is murkav. Murkav is the opposite of pashut. Murkav means complex or put together by a multitude of pieces. Et aniyuta arkava ve'et anuta v'shifluta. The poverty of the murkavut, the poverty that is associated with complexity. Et hakoten v'kotzer hayad, the smallness and the lack that is associated with complexity. Hayovesh v'achorban, the dried outness and the destruction. hamitgaleh b'chol pratei orchotea, which is revealed in all of the details of its pathways, the pathways of complexity. V'hakara shel shalvat hapashtut. This allows us to appreciate and recognize the shalva, the it's shalva, the tranquility. Thank you. The tranquility of the simple path of simplicity. Shia hefech hagamur mikol hamon atlaot, which is the polar opposite of all of the sicknesses, v'hayirudot, and the lowliness of the world of complexity. It's very interesting. As I was reading this, I was thinking to myself, like, when we talk about something that is going on that is not to our liking, so what do we say? We say it's complicated. That's what, right? It's not stam that has come to be that way, right? Complicated. It's not like this algebra equation complicated. That's not what we mean. It means that there's the sense of the essence of complexity. That the essence of complexity means that there's strife, that there's machloket, that there's some type of schism going on. Right? That's what characterizes complexity. That there's a schism. Memalahi et kol ta'ei achayim. This simplicity can fill all of the cells of life, cell like cell, b'chol chagveim umistareim, in all of their little cracks and recesses. Godel va'alizat olamim, the greatness and the simcha, the alizah, the joy of the worlds. ולהעמיד המהפך של כל עולמי התוהו, אשר להרכבה הדלולה גאון הפשטה מתגבר ועולה. That with the tohu, the chaos of the world of complexity, which is very downtrodden, so the splendor of the simplicity is able to be strengthened upon it. V'hinenu tvuyim kulanu biyam shel ora, and then we can all be ensconced in the sea of its light. Interesting terminology. The sea of its light. Sea, like S-E-A. Shotef chayim va'osher b'kirbenu, panim va'achor, that washes us over with life, with front and back. V'ha'abata hani'ima v'ha'torah ha'muglam shel tavei ni'imat ha'kodesh ha'mahapech v'ha'pashta b'shiluvam. But this is where he introduces an interesting idea, and this is going to get into pictorially why the Ma'apach Pashta looks like it does. He says there is a way of giving a shiluv, an integration between the chaos of complexity and the simplicity of the pashtut, simplicity of pashtut. That's kind of like right. This mode of simplicity that he's talking about, to integrate both of them. Hamitaer al yedei shnei kavim ne'ekamim. This is expressed pictorially with two lines that are standing at a diagonal. Sharak minekuda achat mitchabrim. That at one point they connect to each other. Bekatseim, at their ends. Hasmalim, the left side. Hamoreh ala zaruta atzmit sheba'achdut hamurkava, which alludes to the fact that it is foreign for the complexity to unify with the simplicity. Something on the left side, we've talked about this before, the difference between something appearing at the right side or the left side. Something that appears at the right side means that it's more inherent and more natural to the thing. Something that appears on the left side shows that it's not really inherent, it's more of an appendage. Like we talked about this, for example, in Ostet. Ostet is right on the left side of Ostet appears the Zion, which is this aggressive, warlike energy, which is a necessary thing to be there, but it's not an inherent quality. It's only a necessary appendage. So similarly over here, these two lines that come together, they're coming together. They're able to join together. However, it is zar. It's foreign. It's foreign to the complexity to integrate with the simplicity. Asher rak maga kal b'tchuna hayoter rechoka. Hayater klusha v'dlula ya'aseh tor hayichud. that is the only expression of them being able to come together. This one dot, meaning it's not like two parallel lines that are superimposed on each other, right? They're different lines and they're going in different directions, right? Symbolizing like two disparate paths. The path, right? The option of complexity and the option of simplicity. They're completely disparate. However, they have this one point of connection at their left side that they come together. Right? In reality, these two lines are going in completely different directions, which only increases our yearning for the simplicity. That in its original state, it is connected in the Holy of Holies, or Elyon, the sublime light, or Echad, in the unified light, Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. God is one and His name is one. This is alluding to a concept that we talked about also in the last time. This concept that Rav Kook is a very, very central concept in Rav Kook's writings. In general, the idea of the Or Elyon, or the Kedusha Elyona, right? The sublime holiness. The sublime holiness means things that are able to connect disparate things, meaning things that appear different in their superficial manifestation. However, if you go high enough, you can see how they integrate into each other. They're really connected. Right, that's the Kedosh Elyon. The Kedosh, we talked about this in the last time, and the Segula, right? The two dots that are expressing the two sides of the right, the polar opposites. But this top dot, the Kedosh Elyon, is this place of holiness that you can appreciate their common root, and thereby coming and being able to integrate them. So the idea of Hashem Echad, U'Shmo Echad, is alluding to this. What does this mean? God is one and His name is one. That's a pasuk from Sefer Zechariah, right? We say it very often, right? The idea of God's name are all of the external expressions of Hashem in creation. Right? The creation itself is a form of God's name. I think we mentioned in other talks that the Perkei Rabbi Eliezer, very, very in the beginning, like in Perek Gimel, he says that in the very beginning of creation, before God created the world, there was only God and His name. HaKadosh Baruch Hu U'Shemo. God and His name. That was it. There was nothing else. What does that mean, God and His name? It means there was Hashem. It was the essential existence of Hashem. And His name means the ability for Hashem to express Himself outside to other things. And which is just pure potential, meaning it's just the pure potential of Hashem being able to express Himself to things outside of Him. So the world, all of existence, is in a way is coming from Shem Hashem, God being able to express Himself externally in an outward way, right? Hashem and His name. So Hashem and His name being one is that all of the diversity and all of the multitude of this world is one with Hashem itself, meaning it is all an expression of that inherent unity. So the more kavut, the harkava, the complexity, which is again this place of a person experiences lack, a person experiences the sense of poverty, right? The state, right? This experience of schism. That mode, that arena, can be unified with the experience of simplicity. And even though they're two completely different experiences, they're two different kavim, they're two different lines. However, they can be unified at one point, the point of recognizing that complexity is also Ratzon Hashem, is also the will of God, and it is there in order so that we can be in that arena of doing our avoda and doing our work and being able to contribute each in our individual way. So the way of complexity is not necessarily fun. It's not necessarily the most pleasant experience. However, it is unified with the pashtut. It's also unified with the simplicity of the ideal state of being. So, Yishar Koach.